And religion, as we've seen, was certainly a very important part of early samurai culture. If you kill a lot of people, you tend to start worrying about what all that practicality is going to do to your soul. And certainly the main identity of the samurai, the main element of their culture, was absolutely their identity as warriors. And here is where I want to pick up a little bit the political narrative and talk about the Genpei War, the Great War between the Minamoto and Taira clans, led to the defeat of the Taira, and then finish up this lecture by a consideration of that role's war in samurai culture. Because it and other military exploits had a profound influence on the samurai. These were the things that you wanted remembered. These were the things that you wanted to be sung about. And certainly this was the case. That they were sung about, that they were remembered. Samurai were in this way. So to catch us up briefly on what we were talking about earlier, the Taira by 1180 had made themselves the political masters of Japan by defeating their rivals, the Minamoto, and also taking advantage of internal divisions within the Fujiwara family to kind of divide and conquer those great courtiers. And Taira no Kiyomori raised himself to the position of regent that the Fujiwara had occupied before him by doing the exact same thing that they did, which is to say, marry his daughter to the emperor, wait for a grandson to be born, and force the emperor to abdicate, and then you have an infant who you can then just control completely. So if you remember, in 1154, we had the Hogen Rebellion in Japan, where a retired emperor and an emperor went at each other. The reigning emperor won. This was Emperor Go Shirakawa, who was supported by Taira no Kiyomori, and that rebellion was characterized as one where the Taira and the Minamoto clans, these great two samurai clans, were divided within themselves. Elements of the Taira allying with elements of the Minamoto against other elements of the Taira allied with other elements of the Minamoto. And Taira no Kiyomori and a Minamoto by the name of Yoshitomo, the head of that clan at the time, won in 1156, and they fell out with each other in 1160, where two Fujiwara went at each other, trying to wrest control over the emperor and the retired emperor. And in that conflict, it really was the Minamoto clan versus the Taira clan. The Minamoto felt that the Taira had been rewarded far too generously for their role in the earlier 1856 rebellion. Minamoto no Yoshitomo joined with this Fujiwara courtier, Fujiwara Nobuyori, and they were defeated by the Taira. The Minamoto tried to capture the retired emperor and the reigning emperor both. They did that, but both emperors escaped, and the Minamoto forces were trapped inside the imperial palace with no hostages. They were lured out and cut to pieces by Taira no Kiyomori in street fighting in Kyoto, and the Taira had seemed to have won completely in 1160. But they did not actually destroy the Minamoto. They had defeated the Minamoto, and Yoshitomo was killed, but three of his sons lived. Minamoto no Yoritomo, the oldest, I believe he was something like 11 at the time, Minamoto no Noriyori, who I believe was 6, and Yoshitsune, who was really just a baby. And these three lads The story goes at the urging of Taira no Kiyomori's wife, who took pity on them. They were spared, and they were sent to be watched by supposedly loyal Taira retainers. Well, in 1180, there is a good pretext for war. An imperial prince escapes from Kyoto, and he really thinks he should be emperor, and he issues a call for rebellion, and Minamoto no Yoritomo, who is by this point an adult, joins this rebellion. This imperial prince, Michihito, he dies in 1180 in the very same year, so nobody really, I mean, he just becomes nothing more than a pretext. He is taken out of the equation. But the party's on, and Yoritomo is now joined by people who are unhappy with Taira domination. Naturally, these are other members of his family. Noriyori, and especially Yoshitsune, come and join their elder brother, and even some minor Taira retainers like the Hojo clan, which we'll hear a lot more about next week. They join this rebellion against the head Taira branch, or rather, how do I say this? In Japanese, families are divided into head families and branch families. So the Taira who were in control of the imperial family at this point, they were the head family, and a minor branch family like the Hojo was often very, very much left out of the loop. And so they joined with the Minamoto forces, and after some years of skirmishing, the fighting turns ever more to the advantage of the Minamoto. The Minamoto are Eastern warriors. They're right here. The holdings of the Fujiwara family are even farther to the north. This area is still in many ways not really well integrated into Japan, but there's a great deal of Minamoto influence, influence in this area as well, although this map doesn't exactly show it. But in any case, the base of Minamoto power is in the east, right here. Fujiwara are more or less out of it at this point due to their internal bickering, which has been going on for tens of years. And the holdings of the Taira are mostly in the west. Now, if you remember from our earlier lectures, the Eastern warriors are seen as the real elite samurai. They're tough. They can bend bows that are bigger, shoot arrows farther. And this is how it comes down to us in the chronicles, that these violent, raw Easterners descend on the hapless, Western, rarefied Taira who have lived in the capital for such a long time and who really can't fight anymore. This is not entirely accurate. As we've seen during the Heiji Rebellion of 1160, the Taira were excellent fighters. Taira no Kiyomori did lure Minamoto no Yoshitomo out of a very strong position in Kyoto, in the imperial palace. He tricked him, cut him down in the streets of Kyoto. But the perception was there, nonetheless, that the East was the place with the tough guys, that the Minamoto were more or less destined to win. But it really took some extraordinary events for the Minamoto to eventually prevail over the Taira. First of all, Taira no Kiyomori died in 1181. He was a very old man. He died of natural causes, it seems, although there are stories that he died of a broken heart or a sense of foreboding. But really, 1181, he's dead, and his heirs are not up to the task of facing what is a very well executed campaign by Minamoto forces. And that's in part because it is led by Yoritomo's brothers. Noriyori, who's a very seasoned commander, but especially by Yoshitsune, who goes down in history as a absolute legend. You talk to people today in Japan, everybody knows about Yoshitsune, and some people not only know who he was, but can tell you something from his life, from his exploits. Here are some of his exploits. By 1181, the Minamoto forces are gaining their confidence after a series of early minor defeats. They fight with Taira forces in central Japan and start moving west. And by 1184, the Taira position starts to collapse. They lose Kyoto. Then they lose what was their clan capital here in Fukuhara, near today's Kobe. These are occupied by Minamoto forces, and Yoshitsune, Noriyori as well, but Yoshitsune especially distinguishes himself as a true military genius. For example, there is a very strong position that the Taira take right around here, somewhere here. At a place called Ichinotani. The Taira have withdrawn, taking the imperial court with them. The half-Taira emperor Antoku, this baby who may or may not be able to walk by that point, they take him and they kind of hole up in this very strong position here at Ichinotani. Ichinotani is a fort that is built right on the beach. One side of it is anchored by the sea, another side of it is anchored by very steep mountains. And especially imagine basically the mesa where Fort Lewis College stands today. If you anchored one flank of your army on the bottom of something like that, you get a good position of what Ichinotani looked like. This was seen to be impregnable, and the Taira were very confident. Yoshitsune approached this, and he decided not to attack it straight on. He took a handful of men, a few hundred men, up along a mountain path, and actually came down on the Taira between or behind the wall that they had constructed facing eastwards, comes down on them on horseback from the mountains, completely scatters them. It's a humiliating defeat. The Minamoto are victorious. The Taira evacuate. They go to Yashima, which is on the coast of Shikoku. It's where the Taira had one of their bases of power in the inland sea. Remember, they defeated a bunch of pirates, so now they took over their old stomping grounds. They had a very powerful fleet concentrated here. Yoshitsune tries to come to grips with them, takes boats, wants to sail over. He's thwarted, and the Taira are feeling rather secure. But at this point, Yoshitsune gets a small number of men together on just a few boats, about 150 men. During a storm, he crosses over from Honshu, from this big island, to Shikoku, lands down the beach a ways from the Taira at Yashima. They don't see him. He has a small force. They don't expect anyone to come over in the rain. And he once again goes behind the Taira and launches an attack that sweeps them into the sea. Once again, the Taira are humiliated. They have to retreat. They have to run away. There is a very famous incident which is immortalized in samurai culture, in the tale of the Heike, which we shall talk about in the next slide, a war epic basically, where a Taira, a boat full of Taira who are escaping from Yashima, decide to taunt the Minamoto. One of the people on the boat sets up a fan, a folding fan, with a rising sun in the middle of it on top of a mast on one of their ships, and dares the Minamoto to try and knock it down. One of the Minamoto warriors, Nasuno Yoichi, says no problem. He, on his horse, goes out into the surf. He takes aim, and he releases a single arrow that knocks the fan off of the mast of that ship. And this is to show that the Minamoto are basically destined to win. They're just such great warriors. The Taira escape westward, and they end up gathering their fleet at a place called Dan-no-ura, which is a very narrow inlet between Honshu and the island of Kyushu. And there is a final climactic battle where Yoshitsune, like a demon, goes from ship to ship, slaying Taira left and right, and where the Taira, they know they're doomed. And the daughter, the empress, the daughter of Taira no Kiyomori, knows that her son, Antoku, the emperor, will be captured. And so she throws him into the sea, and she herself jumps in after him, and that is it. The Taira are completely crushed. This we know from several sources, but the main, certainly one of the most interesting sources from all of samurai history, I believe, is the Tale of the Heike, which is, in Japanese, is known as the Heike Monogatari, which is a piece of performance art that was later written down. It is a piece that is meant to be sung by blind biwa players. This is one of the things that blind people did in Japan to make a living, was they played this instrument called the biwa, which is basically a lute. And these biwa hoshi went from samurai court to samurai court, from city to city, singing these oftentimes very long epics about great deeds, about samurai. And the Tale of the Heike was one such. I'm sorry, I'm struggling for words here. One such piece of one such epic that was set to music, that was passed down for hundreds and hundreds of years, and that was written down, and which now today survives in many, many different versions. It was meant to be sung, and it still is sung today, but it's also a document that we can sit down and read, and of course you have a selection from it to read for this week. The recitation of this piece was essentially one of the benefits of it was that you appeased the angry spirits of the dead Heike warriors, who are kind of smarting from their defeat. This is a picture of the Battle of Dan-no-ura, and all these Taira drowned, and there is a legend that this Heike crab, this local crab that lives in that area, that this carpus here kind of looks like a helmet. These are said to be the spirits of the dead Heike warriors that live in these crabs. And singing this song about the defeat of the Taira is supposed to appease them. And it's supposed to appease them because the Taira are presented as magnificent. They are presented as truly great warriors, as people who achieved great power. But it is also the Heike Monogatari is a very Buddhist-inspired work, and one of the main themes of this work is impermanence. No matter how great the Taira were, everything that rises must fall, and them too. And they were destined to be defeated by these great Eastern warriors, the Minamoto, these almost semi-savage kinds of samurai, because that's just the destiny of great dynasties. And this is a piece that, as I said, certainly does survive today, is a cornerstone of, in many parts of some aspects that people identify as quintessentially Japanese, People like to talk about the samurai spirit all the time. This is one of the sources they point to that supposedly tells them what that's like, and that's very significant. It's a highly romanticized story, and it is really, despite the fact that you can get it in written form, and we have selections from it for this week, this is something that you should really listen to. And that's what I want you to do. After you after you finish watching this this clip, please go here to YouTube and watch a short song from the Heike Monogatari about the death of Atsumori. This is something that you have that is from that passage that you have to read for this week. This is where the grizzled Minamoto warrior kills a 17-year-old Taira who reminds him of his own boy, and the pathos and the sense of impermanence that comes across it in this story is just absolutely at the heart of what the samurai considered to be part of their culture. On the one hand, it's their duty to kill their enemies. On the other hand, you are killing a human being. And how one deals with that is very, very important and very personal. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful way to enjoy this piece. So please think of that as another element of this lecture. And congratulations, you finished week 1, and I'll see you next week when we are going to talk about the Kamakura government that Yoritomo puts in place after beating the Taira, and the effect that the creation of a warrior government has on Japanese history.